Welcome to Portsmouth Insights. I'm your host, Rob Lauer. Come here to the Portsmouth waterfront, and on any given day at almost any time, you're likely to see a yacht, a sailboat, or a privately owned vessel gliding by. As you find along most of our local waterways, you'll find here along the Elizabeth River several marinas which rent spaces to boat owners. Today we'll visit one of them, Ocean Marine. But if you think Ocean Marine is just another marina, you're in for a big surprise. We'll also sit down with the owner of one of Old Town's most popular restaurants, one that's celebrating its 20th anniversary. And we'll take a look at life in one of the older and most beautiful neighborhoods in Churchland, Sterling Pointe. So sit back and join us for this episode of Portsmouth Insights. Welcome to Portsmouth Insights. Situated on the Elizabeth River between the Portsmouth City Hall and the Naval Shipyard is Ocean Marine. You can see the privately owned boats that are docked here, but don't let what you're seeing fool you. As I learned when I visited them earlier this summer, there is so very much more to Ocean Marine than what meets the eye. So for years I have seen Ocean Marine Yacht Center down here by City Hall with all of the yachts, and I assumed that they were just, that's all it was, a couple of piers with rich people parking their boats there. And that was the extent of it. I'm mistaken, I understand.
Yes, that's a very small part of Ocean Marine. The marina is a beautiful piece, and it's a very pedestrian-friendly piece, and is kind of the ambassador for our whole company. But the boats that come here generally come from all over the world, actually. They're waterway travelers, the east coast of the United States, but a lot of European boats. We've had Russian boats in here, a lot of different yachts from all over the world. So the marina piece that you see is just the gateway to what we really do. Okay, and what is that? We do repair on a very high craftsmanship level. Okay. These yachts, as you kind of mentioned, and some of them are very expensive, and they come in for what's called a refit. We don't build any boats here, but we will take them apart and put them back together again. A lot of it is maintenance. You know, obviously the saltwater environment's very tough on anything. Right. And but we can take them apart and put them back together in just absolutely beautiful manner, the way they were made in Holland or Germany or wherever they come from. Okay, I'm coming here to the conference room this morning for this interview.
Of course, you know, my perception of all of this changed as I walked past the yachts in the marina down and realized that this extends past behind the pavilion all the way down to the shipyard. I understand your property does.
That's correct, and I'll break it down into four major pieces for you. We have obviously the marina, which I said was very pedestrian friendly, and then we have a dry storage, which is like a boat hotel, where the smaller boats are actually put in racks indoors and kept very nicely, even through the winter months and that kind of thing. And that's kind of semi-private because it's generally just the guy who owns the boat or his family and friends come into the dry storage to get their boat. And then on the other side, we have what we call the small boat repair, which is boats you know, from very small to up to about 80 feet. And we take those out on an 80-ton lift. And then we have the much larger repair section, which we can lift boats over 200 feet and put them indoors for repair.
Wow.
So it's those four different pieces of the business, basic pieces.
Okay, and what is the, I'd say, where does the majority of your business, your activity, is it in repairing larger boats? Is it?
And this company was started as a maintenance and repair company, and we still are mainly that, a maintenance and repair company. So the boats come in here, and we have, like I say, capability of pulling them out of the water, and we do engine repair, transmissions, air conditioning, plumbing, everything you could think of, radios, radar, you know, electronics, all of that is done here. And we're noted around the world for our paint, though. That's our main.
Paint jobs, okay. Yeah, this morning I understand when I got here that you were busy doing something this morning. I mean, is that with a boat? Can you tell us about that? Is that typical of the
it's a beautiful private yacht that was built on the West Coast in Seattle, Washington, and there's a local owner that owns it here. It's 130 feet long. Wow. It's just beautiful, and we hauled that out of the water this morning, just before you got here, to perform maintenance on the bottom, the propellers, shafts, seals, things like that.
Okay. Well, what else would you, I mean, educate us a little bit more. What else would you like the public to know about what you do here?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's not really seen is the level of craftsmanship we have here, and I'll explain that to you. We have a welding shop, and we weld carbon steel, aluminum, and stainless steel, and that's very high polished stainless steel. It looks like a mirror. It's just beautiful work. So that's something that most places don't do. I mean, there's a lot of shipyards obviously that can weld as good, or and on any level, but the level of finish is different here. We also have 2 master carpenters on board. We have a beautiful joinery shop, and we can do cabinet grade finish work on the inside of the wood of these boats. It's just beautiful wood. And then we have the composite and fiberglass shop, which is all the fiberglass boats, laminates. If someone's boat collides into a piling and it have all these ugly scratches and things, we can make that go away where you can't find it.
Wow.
And then again, what I think we're known for globally is our paint shop.
So I would assume you're craftsmen, you're very skilled people working here.
It's a high skill level that we have to train. We take a lot of people in and work with them. We work with Tidewater Community College and their programs locally, and we work with all the area shipyards as well.
How many people do you employ here?
We average about 60 people.
That's a good sized company.
and it was a workforce that was developed here. We didn't we didn't take over another business or displace workers and then hire new workers. This was job creation.
Okay. Well, now, how long has the business been in existence? How long have you been here?
The Ocean Marine Inc. started out as a little company in 1989.
Okay.
And we worked out of office warehouse type space. And then we leased a corner of another marina to do our service there. And in 1996, I sat on the seawall where the Intellos Pavilion was and started drawing pictures of what I thought could go into this space, which was a 19-acre old Coast Guard station that was abandoned. And it's a long story. I'll make it short, but had to find financing.
Really?
So obviously we had to find some bigger fish, and we joined forces with a company called Marine Hydraulics International, which is a government contracting shipyard, and they actually supplied the funding and made all this dream become a reality. And they were really good and put a lot of time and effort into it with me, and here it is today.
So what's the future looking like for you at this point?
I think the past couple years have been a little tough in our economy.
Right.
But that created what we call deferred maintenance. A lot of these yachts, really needed some work, and
people put off having it done.
Exactly, and I think we're seeing that start to come back. So I think when you have a yacht of a certain expense, you really have to keep it up. I mean, you just can't let it go. It's like a house or anything else. You just can't let it go and devalue it. So it's coming back around, but it's a tough road right now with this economy.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to talk to us today and tell us about what you do here. I certainly, when I look down the waterfront here, I look beyond just that. I really thought that all of this was other businesses and things. I had no idea the extent of what you have here, but it's really impressive.
Well, thank you. And I think the last point that I'd like to make that I think is real important to the citizens of Portsmouth is that there's a lot of indirect business that results from this company. And one of the things is a waterway traveler that stops here they're not going to cook on their boat.
Right.
So they run up and they go to the restaurant, and then they hopefully will get maintenance or repairs done by us. They'll buy fuel from us, put groceries on their boat or whatever they need to do, and all of those things are taxable.
Yeah.
And of course, then when the yachts come from other countries, the big yachts, and they spend, they buy fasteners, they have to stay in our hotels, they rent cars, and all of that is done within, as much as we can do, we use Portsmouth businesses.
Right.
And so there's a lot of indirect benefit that we try to, bring people from all over the world in here to spend their money.
Yeah.
And, leave some of that tax in Portsmouth. So that, I think that's a huge benefit as well.
I agree. Thank you very much for telling us about it today.
Okay.
Next on Portsmouth Insights, we'll visit the owner of one of Old Town's most popular restaurants, one that's celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. So stay tuned.
priceless moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Ready or not, here I come.
Take time to be a dad today.
Daddy, I'm gonna find you.
This song was created with heartbeats of children in need. Find out how it can help frontline health workers bring hope to millions of children at everybeatmatters.org.
Welcome back to Portsmouth Insights. In recent years, Old Town Portsmouth has become a destination for area foodies. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with that term, foodie is a slang word for an aficionado of good food and drink. Old Town is filled with homegrown restaurants offering diverse menus. Behind me is one of the most popular. Rudy's is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. Let's head inside and talk with owner Charles Greenhood and find out about the restaurant's history and some of the exciting new changes that are breathing new life into Old Town's nightlife. Charles Greenhood is the owner of Rudy's Restaurant and Catering. Thanks for joining us, Charles.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good to have you. And a beautiful place, beautiful restaurant.
Thank
People
you.
have not been here. It's just a gorgeous facility. And now you've been here for 20 years.
Yep. This is our 20th anniversary this July.
Well, congratulations. But you didn't start out in the restaurant business. Your family was involved in other sorts of business.
Oh, yeah. Very many things.
So I remember back in the 70s when I was a kid, there was Greenhood's catalog company out in Churchland.
Yeah.
And then you also have some international experience. You had a yogurt store, I understand, somewhere.
Yeah.
Very exotic.
When we closed up Greenhood's in Churchland back in 1986, I moved to the Caribbean. I moved to the West Indies and St. Martin and St. Bart's and opened up a frozen yogurt and ice cream business.
It went well.
It went very well.
Very nice lifestyle
We
there, I
had a
suppose.
great time, and I liked ice cream and frozen yogurt, so we had as much of that as we could eat, and that's all we ate for the first few months. But things went well.
So how did you end up going from the West Indies back to Portsmouth here in Old Town?
Well, after being in the West Indies for about 4 years, with kids here and family, they didn't want to travel as much anymore, and came back to Portsmouth and decided to open up an espresso bar and bakery. And before that, in the early part of the summer, we opened up a coffee cart where we sold espresso and a new thing that I developed called bagel nuts, which is cream cheese filled bagel dough, which are now wildly popular. We ship them all over the country, and as a matter of fact, fairly soon we'll be introducing them in major markets. So
Great,
build a
congratulations.
manufacturing facility, and that's very exciting. We have a lot of interest from outside industry. Food service industry is very interested in it, and we're looking forward to that. So.
Yeah, I bet you that's great.
And then we opened up, we turned a little coffee cart into a cafe on Dinwiddie Street, and we operated there. We had like seating for 30 people, 40 people, and started doing catering. And our catering business kind of took over. We did a lot of catering for pharmaceutical reps and business-to-business catering. We operated out of the small space that we had on Dinwiddie Street, which was very, very small and cramped. And we did off-premise catering for weddings and other styles of events. Of course, my catering background came from when I worked with my father as a child at Suburban Country Club. And he had me doing everything from putting toothpicks in little toothpick holders when I was able to do that, to going on the buffet line and serving food and helping the chef. And I just learned my way around the kitchen and banquet halls when I was pretty young. And so the place got too small for us, and we had a lot of requests for bigger caterings, and we just didn't have the capacity to do it. This location we're in now, back in 1997, became available. It was the old Virginia stationery store. And I was interested in finding out if they wanted to rent it because it was empty for about a year. And they said sure. So we made a lease and we rented the space on the first floor, built a huge kitchen and nice dining room.
Very nice dining room.
Well, the intention was not really to go into the restaurant business, but since we had such a big space and we had the dining room and we had a marvelous kitchen, we outfitted it, with everything we could possibly imagine. We opened in the year 2000, and to great success. We had many, many years of unbelievable business because people were just coming here, for this new renaissance of eating in Portsmouth, and Brudy's happened to be at the top of it. And
I was living in New York at the time, but I remember my parents, who I talked to every few days, said, when you come home, we've got to go to this new place in Old Town for brunch on Sunday. And my first Sunday back, this is where the whole family came here.
Matter of fact, speaking of New York, we styled the interior after a very famous restaurant in Manhattan. The name of it was Balthazar. And I'd eaten there a couple times, and just it always impressed me with the brasserie type of look.
Yeah.
And so that's how we kind of I've channeled the decorating and everything to a French brasserie. Even though we didn't have a strong French menu, but we had more or less a very broad spectrum menu with steaks and chops and seafood, fresh seafood, and pastas and pizzas, and we have a wood-burning pizza oven in the back, wood-stone pizza oven. And it just became very popular. On Fridays and Saturday nights, we'd have 250, 300 people that flowed through here on an evening.
You're expanding into the comedy scene now? Is part of the comedy club scene, is part of the future, hopefully?
We do have, since January, we've got stand-up comedy every Friday night between 9 p.m. and 11, and we have a lot of great regional and local talent come through, and occasionally a very well-known national comic will come through and do their bit. It's met with great success. We have big crowds on Friday nights, and they'll come in and eat dinner a little early and then stay for comedy night, and people will just specifically come for comedy night. But about a year ago, we opened up a nightclub on our upper floors of the building. I purchased the building 5 years ago.
And this is the Masonic Temple that's sort of next door and upstairs.
The entire building was the Masonic Temple, Masonic Lodge. And so I bought the building about 5 years ago, and now 6 years ago probably. And was going to put apartments on the top floor and banquet halls, and we decided to open up a nightclub. And the nightclub did very, very well. We ran into a few little problems with our host community, the Old Town residents, and I decided to tone down the nightclub business. And now we're doing mostly weddings and socials and receptions, and we will eventually, when the comedy night gets bigger, take it up to the upper floors, which hold, total capacity is about 1,100 people. The interesting thing is that we're planning blues and jazz for up there, and that is meeting with a tremendous amount of good reception. People are hungry for a place that focuses on blues and jazz, and not necessarily the hip hop and things that might be more in line with younger crowds. But the blues and jazz are going to start in the fall, and we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's great. Now, the comedy night is drawing people from all over Hampton Road.
Yes.
That's not here in Portsmouth.
Oh, yeah.
So it really is worth the trip through the tunnel to get here, even if you have trouble with the tunnel in the coming months. So thanks so much for taking time to talk to us.
My pleasure.
Really.
Thank you very much.
Continued luck with Brudy's. More Portsmouth Insights is coming up. Stay tuned.
Being a dad can be tough.
No. What do you mean she's not coming?
When's the fairy princess coming?
Any minute now.
But when you're willing to do anything,
It is I, Cruise, Zinkerbell. Okay, time for cake.
It's always worth it.
I know it's really you, Drew. I'm just pretending for the other kids.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Get your ass up. You're not in here. Yes, I am. Move. Give it to him hard.
No, ow.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Why you stabbing me with it? No,
They want to help,
ow.
but don't know how.
Oh, you got...
Teach your kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
Welcome back to Portsmouth Insights. One of the first neighborhoods built in Churchland is also one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Portsmouth. For over 60 years, Sterling Pointe has been a community of unique custom-designed homes situated along beautifully shaded, winding streets with access to scenic ponds in the western branch of the Elizabeth River.
My name is Rachel Benzie. I moved to Sterling Pointe in April of 1950.
I'm Jean Shackelford. I have lived in Sterling Pointe for 57 and a half years in the same house, which my late husband and I built.
My husband and I were the first residents to move into the area. Jim had married Waters. He owned Waters Pontiac on High Street with a second. And then came Frank Beck, who was principal of Churchland High School, and Vernon Essie Kuhn. And I am the only living person left in the original group that moved to Sterling Pointe.
We moved to this neighborhood because it was a growing, relatively new neighborhood. Green Acres and Sterling Pointe were growing up at about the same time.
Sterling Pointe has no official name. I mean, it has nothing of record, legal record of Sterling Pointe. Mr. McLean named the first street that he cut off of High Street, Sterling Pointe Drive, and people would begin to refer to the area as, oh, it's Sterling Pointe. Go out on Churchland Boulevard. It's Sterling Pointe Drive is where you turn in. And therefore, it evolved as Sterling Pointe. There was one house that sat on the corner. It was the Bidgood Farm. And the Bidgood house sat on the corner of Sterling Pointe Drive and High Street. It was a frame farmhouse with a porch all the way across the front, and I can see to this day Mrs. Bidgood sitting on that front porch in a rocking chair with a dress down to her ankles. There is also a street. Mr. McLean named the streets out there. There's a Bidgood Drive. There was a lake also, which is interesting, on the farm. And Mr. McLean cultivated, it wasn't a lake, excuse me, it was a spring, a natural spring. So he cultivated it and developed the lake, which sits on Lake Circle Drive. It's the one where the city put the fountains in.
When we moved in, built our home, we started in 1955 and moved in February of 56. There were only two houses other than mine in my block, and we did not have paved streets.
We lived out in Sterling Pointe for 5 years without city sewage, without paved roads, without street lights, and had an awful lot of mud. They finally put gravel on the roads to help the mud situation. We didn't get any paved roads for 5 years in that area. We were too far out in the country.
We also had trouble getting a telephone, but my husband had a strategic job with the Department of the Navy at the Naval Shipyard, and so we were able to get a telephone because of his position at work.
I raised my children there. My son was 7 when we moved out there, and my daughter was born out there. And of course, it was a wonderful place to raise children. And it still is a wonderful place to raise children.
I was saying to my daughter as I was talking to her before I came in, and I said, "What should I say?" And she said, "Tell them it was a wonderful place to grow up."
The children loved it. They used to, there were 2 or 3 tributaries that came One came all the way up to where the Gamaliel Synagogue is now. And the children used to love to fish. And I called them deep ditches. But they loved to fish in there. And they'd take their fishing poles. They'd come in and get fishing poles about 3 o'clock in the afternoon when they got in from school, the boys, and go down and they'd fish until dark. Sometimes you had to go get them after dark.
The children in our neighborhood, of which in a 2-block area, there were about 20 children who varied in age of 3 and 4 years younger or 3 or 4 years older. And they all were friends. The older ones looked out for the younger ones. And many of them have remained close friends, which I think is very significant to the kind of neighborhood that it was.
It was a great place for children. It was safe. There was no crime in the neighborhood. And I think we have very little crime still in Sterling Pointe. I think it's probably one of the low crime areas in our city.
The most beautiful time in our neighborhood is spring. Mm-hmm. Late March through April into early May, because the azaleas bloom, the cherry trees bloom, the dogwoods bloom, and so that is a beautiful time in our neighborhood. Most people do plant flowering plants in the summer, so you see some variations of that throughout the neighborhood.
We don't have a civic league in Sterling Pointe, but that's why the garden club was formed.
The garden club works very vigorously to maintain the triangles. We have a lot of triangles in the neighborhood. The way that Mr. McLean laid the property out, there are triangles in the area, and they have all been planted by the garden club, and they are kept up by the garden club. Sterling Pointe has become a very, I would say, worthwhile community for the city. The tax base in our area has continually risen. Most of the homes in Sterling Pointe are custom-built homes.
The houses that are selling, and have been for the last, I'd say, 10 years, are selling to young families, which is wonderful. I was concerned when the house across the street from me was sold. But a young couple bought it. They had 2 young children and have had 2 more since then, and it's wonderful to look out my front door and see the bikes in the street again and the children riding bikes and playing ball. But it's still a great place. It's a family neighborhood. It's a great place to raise a family.
We have always had good schools for the children in our neighborhood to attend. We've never had a problem with the educational system, whether it was Norfolk County, Chesapeake for just a little while, or of course in Portsmouth. And Churchland Elementary is the elementary school that served the neighborhood, and then Churchland Junior High Middle School, and then the high school.
I would recommend anybody looking for a house to buy in Sterling Pointe.
I love my house and I love my neighborhood, and I always have. And I keep telling my daughter, I hope you take me out in a pine box because I don't want to go anywhere else.
Of course, there are a lot of wonderful neighborhoods that have developed in and around our area, but there's no way you could go wrong with living in Sterling Pointe and raising your family there.
That's our show for today. As is our custom here, we asked our guests what they would like you to know about Portsmouth. Let's hear what they had to say.
One positive thing I would like everybody to know is we have good schools.
I have heard it said that great schools make great cities, and I do believe that. Being an educator, I would like to say that that is an important aspect of any city.
My children all graduated from Portsmouth schools, and one ended up a judge and the other is a teacher, so I think that speaks highly of our Portsmouth system.
I think that the downtown and the historic area in the downtown area is a very vital part of the city. And I think that the public relations that is being used to promote that now is very essential, and I hope it will continue and expand.
There you have it. But don't take their word for it. Come to Portsmouth. See what all the talk is about.